The good guy is winning, right, Don? Those chords and that section is a little bit too positive, it's too adventurous, as Ryan was putting it.
Hey guys, today I'm joined by Marc Jovani from Cinematic Composing, and we're going to look at some rescores of a scene from The Hobbit, Desolation of Smog. So the first one we have is from Ralf. Score. The first thing that comes to mind is I think it starts really strong and big, and I don't know if that energy was quite maintained throughout. Like, it kind of lost some energy as it went. I think it's right to be big and exciting, but then it's like, I think we need to keep being big and exciting because the fight's not over yet, you know?
I agree. I love the structure, and I can see how the music follows the scene 100%. And I love how it starts, as you were saying, and I love the tone of the music. And I agree 100% with you that size, the energy, the aggression that's presented the first time, and also the tone, because this darker type of thing, should be maintained. Obviously, following the same structure, which I love.
When he starts introducing more woodwind colors, I think that those are, you know, they have less strength than the brass, and so that's when it starts to get lighter and friendlier in a way. What do you think of the harp here?
I think it's a little bit too exposed. In my opinion, I see three solutions here. I would add some background, something to support the arp. That arp, I would lower it at least 1 or 2 octaves, because that's gonna darken the tone a little bit. I think it's gonna work a little bit better for what's going on in the scene. It's going to match what we had before. The third thing that I was gonna say is like a little bit more of reverb, because the arp is a little bit dry. We're using samples. I think that the biggest problem with samples is that they are samples. So it's not a real orchestra, and so they always, no matter how good they are, we're always going to be able to tell, oh, it's sampled, right? And for the audience, subconsciously, they'll know somehow. And usually the high-pitched notes it's easier for us as an audience to tell, oh, it's sampled on the low notes. Hide them behind, add something else. So, for example, if you got the art, dun, tin, dun, dun, tin, dun, if you've got the a timpani, dun, tin, dun, dun, tin, like, that's gonna add a little bit of, something else that hides the the sampled imperfections that make us know that, oh, it's a sample.
The ostinato here, especially when it kind of lifts up a step, I don't know, it feels a little positive to me, less threatening. I'm kind of like grooving a little bit. You know, maybe an odd meter or something. If you insist on this ostinato thing, maybe, go Rite of Spring and jump, where you don't quite know where it's going to get you. It's more adventure than it is danger.
I agree 100%. Right. Yeah, so well put. Yeah, I darken it a little bit. Like what we had at the beginning was a little bit darker, right?
That's what I was saying. It's like, wow, it started, it was kind of a different tone. So it's rhythmically similar, but the brass are kind of over here, and then things are over here. So even though the meter is not the only solution or option, but having some chaos and some
yeah,
just things keeping us off balance and, you know, kind of losing our sense of, oh no, it's over there. Oh, there's another guy over there, you know.
The beginning is great. The beginning is fantastic. And the part that we're critiquing now is like what we're seeing is a little bit too positive. It's great. It's like fantastic. It's great energy. I think again, it's a little bit too positive. If you could put for a second, Brian, when he's like hitting the orc against the,
Where was that?
You'll see that it's a little bit too heroic, right? And then the next one, if you go for just one more second, that one is a little bit darker.
That last one, yeah.
That last one was a little bit darker, and maybe if I understand what you are doing, Ralf, is like, well, the good guy is winning, right? Done, and then the bad guy hits the good guy, and you're like, I'm gonna darken this chord. That's a great idea. I still think those chords and that section is a little bit too positive, it's too adventurous, as Ryan was putting it, too heroic. And I would keep it dark. Like if we look at just the scene, the colors, the light, it's super dark. And not to talk about the orc. Is that an orc? Am I saying it right?
I think they're orcs. Yeah. I think so.
Okay, cool.
Someone in the comments will correct us. But, yeah.
Can I comment about a couple of things that I love? So sound-wise, I think the strings great work. I think they're well positioned. They're wide. They sound aggressive, but they should sound. The low mid strings fantastic as well. The depth, I love it. It's not too wet. It's not too dry. So I love that. I love that energy. I love in general. Brass sounds great as well, especially at the beginning. And in general, the sound matches quite well what we had before and after. So Howard Short, which is super hard. So great work is that. Howard Short, super realistic orchestral sound, super hard to match. So great work there. Woodwinds with samples, we tend to have them a little bit too loud, too hot, right? And so if Howard Shore would have written the exact same thing that you've written, because they would have recorded it with a real orchestra, those woods would have sounded way lower in volume. Generally, what I would recommend is lower the volume of woodwinds and move them back a little bit, because generally out of the box, when we load those cinematic studio woods or whatever, or burning woods, they are always going to sound a little bit too much in your face for a realistic orchestral context. So I would have not written what you've written for the woodwinds right there. I agree with Ryan. But if I would have placed them farther away and lower in the mix, and that would have helped a little bit.
I think one other thing I might add, very kind of specifically, I guess, if we're keeping this harp part, is maybe like some low strings or something when this rider shows up, so that we acknowledge, oh boy, you know, here's something coming, and that will kind of lead us into the ostinato. You know, just a low, and then we're in, then we're off, you know. All right, let's go on to our next one. So here we have an entry from Alex. Thank you, Alex. Very different.
Yeah.
I love that it's very different. That keeps it fun. That's good. Something that stood out to me, I really like the dark tone of it. It's a little, like you said, the lighting and just everything about the surroundings is very dark, and I think we're fitting that. I like that this came up second because I feel like it's an example. There's kind of two ways to approach a fight scene like this. I feel like that you hit everything and kind of every punch and every slam against a bar, or you just kind of like set the scene and let the fight play through a little bit. I think this is more on that side. I did notice I watched Fellowship of the Ring recently with my son for the first time, and that felt like more of the Howard Shore approach. Actually, it was to kind of let the fight scenes play, and the music was a little more kind of steady, setting the mood rather than hitting every punch. Either one is a legitimate approach, I think.
This is a more bold approach because you have to, when you do something like this, it's like, okay, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna hit anything, right? And you've got many reasons to hit things here. It's like, no, I'm gonna. What I like to describe it as an arc, right? It's the music is it kind of like describes the arc of the scene, which I love. It's kind of I personally prefer that approach these days.
I liked the beginning and end, but it lost me a little in the middle. That's the hard part. That's the hard part, yeah. But the thing that lost me was just kind of, I guess, it's a little harsh to say maintaining my interest, though, and just kind of keeping the tension rising. I wasn't getting like a rise and a neat, like a pull forward with everything. It was a little too steady for my...
Exactly.
For wanting to pull me, I guess.
Because in my opinion, when you're doing what you're describing, right, it's like sits more in the background, it's an arc. The music needs to tell a story, right? And there's a story in each scene. There's a structure in each scene. And if you're not hitting things, Mickey Mousing things, still, in my opinion, the music should support or enhance the story that's being told in the scene, so it needs a structure. That I think in that middle part, I felt the same thing. It's like, where are we at this point? Where I need for the music to do something, to shift, to bring us, to tell us something, or to bring us somewhere.
Hitting things does not have to mean a drum beat on a punch or Mickey Mousing, as you said. A hit can also just mean even just lining up with a cut, because that will feel nice and smooth. Or, I think more importantly, what you're saying is a shift when the story takes a slight turn. Like, he got the one up on this one guy. Oh, he's having a harder time with this guy. Like, these things are still happening. There's still a story to this scene as far as like who's on top and who's going down, and again, like that one guy walking away, that's a shift in the story. Like, things for the world of whatever's going on in this scene, things have changed. That this guy gave up and moved on, and I think we change here. Yeah, it's a little too. It's the right tone, but it's too steady, is what I feel. That we're just kind of like.
My approach when scoring in a scene, and I call it cheating, and that can be the title for another video. How Marc cheats when scoring. Yeah. So basically, there are three levels of composing music for a scene. It can be like pure Mickey Mousing, right, which is what we were talking about, hitting each thing. It can be the complete opposite, which is the music follows the scene, and generally the scene is going to have 3 acts, etc. It's going to have 3 parts, etc. And this is what we're seeing here, right? There's one part when they're like, okay, we're going to fight, right? And the second part, they are fighting. This generally is the longest part, the second act, and then it has a climax, and then we've got the resolution, right? When the guy leaves, and boom. But that presents a conflict for the next scene. And then we've got the in-between, the hybrid, which is, to me, there's always in life, in everything, there's tension and release. In everything, there's in a move, in a comment, in a conversation, it's always a question. I'll ask some things like, what do you think about this, Ryan? Ryan's like, this is what I think. Boom, resolution. So there's a conflict resolution or tension release. And then in a scene, you can always analyze, like, the main character would look at something, right? And that look will resolve with something. So musically, you can be following the tension release at a more micro, or macro level. But those things can help you deciding what to do musically, because when you think about tension release musically, it's exactly what we do. Tension, a darker chord, or with more tension type of chord. Release, like the resolve, you resolve that chord, right? Or orchestration, darker orchestration, a more transparent orchestration for the release. Maybe we've theorized enough. Maybe now we can look at the scene and give Alex
okay, yeah.
comments.
So I want to ask, when you're working, do you do any kind of theoretical sketching, like taking notes, this will be tense, this will be release, or anything like that?
Yeah. That's how I set my markers, like tension release, things like this, and then I'll do all the comments, like she says whatever, right? Or here music drops. So I'll theoretical, exactly, and then I start.
Do you want to take another listen to this, and we'll think about where might we want to ramp up the tension?
Here's what I'll say. So when we have this approach, which what Brian said, we're telling a story, right? Where it's an arc. This type of music or cues is a type of cues that generally, if you remove the scene, they still work, right? Because the music is telling a story. So what that means is that when we're telling a story musically, there should be continuity, right? Like Dark Knight is a good example of that, right? Hans Zimmer, it's very repetitive, right? But it's telling a story. So how do we tell a story with music? Well, we can have a melodic statement that evolves. We can have different sections. There's a moment where there's a drop, but that drop should be justified. It has to musically work. And what happens here, what Ryan pointed out, is that it's quite static, right? I love the tone and we love everything, but it stays all the time in the same place. And there are changes and shifts, but that we are not kind of like going anywhere. We're staying the same.
For me, it's a need of a tonality shift. Just the what feels like safe and home continues to feel safe and home. So let's move that. And so, the Howard Shore approach would just be move it by a third in some direction, and you will get that chromatic median lift. It's technically not that difficult to do, but it always works. Move by a third, and we're off into a whole new plane of energy. So before we look at the last one, where can people find you?
They can go cinematicomposing.com or in our channel, Marc Jovani Cinematic Composing.
I'll put links.
I'm not gonna say marcjovani.com because my website is not it's not updated.
Okay.
But
I won't put a link to that one, but I'll put links to everything else down below. Okay, so our last one is from John Driscoll.
There are a lot of things that I love about this one. With the live orchestra, this would sound great. It sounds great, but I'll say with a good recorded, great musicians, live orchestra, this would sound great.
Yeah, I think this one has a nice blend of hitting specific hits, but also shifting the story forward, and it changes and evolves as it goes. I think that was really nicely done. My one, and as we're watching, these are great, and so everyone we've had is great, and part of what we're doing is just trying to find things to say to help the composers or help all of you watching. So sometimes I feel like I'm just pulling for stuff. But in this case, the one thing I felt like there were some moments where the music was just a little ahead of the cut or the hit. And it got there slightly before I got there. We kind of announced him before we as an audience knew, oh no, there's somebody there, there's a guy there. Like the trumpet already told me there's a guy over there. And yet we are hearing the sound effect, but I think responding to that might work a little better. I saw Michael Giacchino give a talk once, and he said when he scored Lost, he'd get a new episode and he'd load it up and he would improvise along with it so that he was reacting to the story the exact same way anyone else watching it for the first time would be reacting. So when something happens and then you're like, oh no, that's there, there's a little bit of a delay. And so here we're kind of showing the hand with this. There. I would respond more like, oh no, there's a guy there. And there was a cut to Legolas that was also, it's like we got there just a little early. So these are minor technicality things, but they're there. Let me see if it was. Those strings felt just a little before the cut to me. And so a good rule of thumb is like, I don't know if you know this one, but I always learned that it was 2 to 4 frames after the cut is actually the sweet spot. This felt 2 to 4 frames before the cut a little bit. Or was it? Yeah, it's just like slightly ahead of it. So just shift all those. Maybe we shift the whole score 6 frames later. And
will they still work?
But but yeah, overall, I think some really good writing here.
Those strings coming up, that was great. That was perfect. That sounded fantastic. Great synchronization mock-up. That was a daga 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 going up. That was fantastic. It was great. So when Legolas appears, I think it could be a little bit too heroic, but hey, maybe Howard Shore would have done something similar. That's the only thing that caught my attention to that first section. And thanks for rescoring the first section as well. There you go, exactly. Those higher strings that we just heard. Usually the strings, the high violins are the very easy for us to tell, oh, it's samples. Not as much these days, but especially like 2000, that's gonna age me very well. Like 2000, like the libraries, like 2010, 12 libraries, like the LAS scoring strings and the ADOs, Adagio, all these libraries, and obviously they all be an ensemble. All these libraries, the higher you went, the worse they sounded. And so always hide that. So those high notes, the way to hide it if you don't want to add any other instrument, have them in tremolo or double tremolos on top of that, because that's gonna have the texture that's gonna make them feel more alive. Because it's a real human being or section actually performing, not just a dead note recorded super static.
These are all great interpretations of music to add, but there was no music. Why do you think maybe that was the choice?
I don't know. We would have to look at this in context. I personally, obviously, I'm not who to say, but I would have had music in this scene. I think it worked so well, especially after seeing some of these so very well scored scenes. I think it makes it more dramatic for sure. With no music, it keeps you on the edge, right? At least to me, that's what I felt. It's like when there's no music and there's a fight, it's like your fear is like the good guy's gonna die, or something really bad is going to happen, because it makes it way more real. Because when you are putting music, you're enhancing, either you're making it easier to watch or dark, whatever it is, right? Or you're speeding up. But when there's no music, it's raw and real, and you can feel its hit more. So I guess maybe that's why they chose to go without music.
If you are serious about film scoring or writing orchestral music, then you really need to get serious about orchestration. So you have to check out Marc's video here, where he's going to tell you everything you need to know about that. Thank you so much for doing this. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure, and I feel honored to be here. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So thank you to everybody who submitted their submissions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.